Mr. Leach, do I have your consent?
Oh, yes.
Now it's going to get saucy. But like an honorable mention to the original pitch that the fuck is that?
I have no idea. I thought you did that. I was
No?
like, why are you thumbs down on yourself?
What the hell is that? That's the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
Anyway, fun little blooper.
Fun little blooper. Yeah, I'm like, imagine we're accidentally live on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, boo.
Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video here on the channel. I am very honored and have an absolute treat for you. The man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Cody Leach. Dude, thank you so much for joining me on the channel and talking Elm Street shop.
Yeah, man. Thank you for the invite. I like this topic. It's exciting.
Yeah, it's not a lot of people talk about it because I think it just kind of got buried in obscurity with how many unmade Elm Street films there were, but also like pictures from the cast. Because like, when did you first get into Freddy? Like, what was there? What was the first Elm Street film you watched? Like, and who introduced you to it?
Well, I remember my first horror movie like it was yesterday. It was Child's Play 3, and I very quickly gatewayed from that into Freddy. And I want to say it was Freddy 4. I'm not 100% positive on my first one, but it kind of felt like I watched all of them within like a couple of days once I was on the hook. I was only like 4 years old, so I was an instant addict. But Dream Master for quite a few years was my favorite, so I'm inclined to think that was the first one that I watched.
That's a good one to start on, man. It's like
Mhm.
that, especially when you're four. It's like MTV. You're like, oh, he's
Yeah.
like it's like what Rennie Harlan said. He's like, I wanted to make Freddy like James Bond in
Hmm.
part four. I've said this at nauseum. I started on your favorite, Freddy's Dead.
Oh God. And you're still a fan. That's
Dude,
it's
like
wild how that
again,
happened.
yeah, I equate it to Samurai Cop or The Room. It's
Hmm.
just so bad it's good. And again, like when I think I was 8 or 9, so a few years older than you, and I thought it was the scariest thing and the funniest thing I'd ever seen when Freddy's got the chalkboard and he's doing his ooh, like,
Uh-huh.
and I'm like, this guy's a hero. Love him. Um,
Maybe I just need to watch that movie with the right friends. I've only ever watched it by myself. Maybe that's what I'm doing wrong for 35 years.
yeah, dude. Again, like it's like if you're in good company, have some food, some beers, and you roast it like you would Batman and Robin. It's like
Hmm.
that kind of it's in that realm. And then I worked my way backwards, and I finished on the first Elm Street. So I'm
Oh
watching
wow.
the first Elm Street, and I'm like, who the hell is this? This guy is diabolical in this one.
That's interesting. You went in reverse order. So it was like, this guy's supposed to be a cartoon. Why are
Yeah,
we scared of
exactly.
him?
Yeah. I'm like, oh, I thought we were watching Looney Tunes, man. But yeah, guys, today we're going to be talking the unmade Elm Street films. And like I was saying to Cody before, there's actors who had written pitches and treatments, including John Saxon, who wrote a 12-page treatment. I'm going to leave that one to last because, like I said before we got on here, it's the most wild story ever. An honorable mention to Wes's original Elm Street 3 script. Do you know much about that?
I know that it was supposed to be much more hard R. I know that the
Mm,
dialogue, I've seen pages of the dialogue where it's a lot meaner.
yes.
And I don't really know specifically story wise what was changed about it, but I know his script was pretty rough as far as Freddy just going like even more maniacal than he was in the first film with the language and everything.
You're spot on. Like he was calling Kincaid the C-bomb, threatening him to shit on his corpse.
Hmm.
Like there is that floating theme of teen suicide in Dream Warriors, but in Wes's script, it's a lot
Hmm.
more prevalent. It's a lot more sadder. I think that's the best way to describe. And Freddy's just like a jerk. Like
Hmm.
he's just yeah. It's because the script is readily available, and I did a video a few years ago going through it, and I read it for the video. I'm like, that just I don't know. That's just so. It just didn't seem like Wes wrote it. Like he wrote it with his writing partner Bruce Wagner, and Wes had to go off and film Deadly Friend, I think
Hmm.
it was, and they wanted him to direct, but then yeah, it obviously went over to Chuck Russell. Where do you rate Dream Warriors?
That's my favorite one.
Okay.
I mean, it's pretty damn close with the first one, but like that one's just so fun while still holding
Mm.
on to a lot of what I love about the darker Freddy that I think probably like 7 out of 10 times when I'm in a Freddy mood, I grab that one. But
For
that's a
sure.
wild turn of events because like he very clearly must have been reacting hard off of what they did in the second film. And so he was just like cranking everything, all the mean dials up to 11. And then he leaves to go do Deadly Friend, which was like a whole other set of just wild circumstances. He wants to make this coming of age, fun little sci-fi romance movie, and then everybody that tests it is like, dude, where's the kills? And so they just make him randomly put horror in this movie where it makes no sense. I love that movie. It's god awful, but I love it. It's a great disaster piece.
Because yeah, he looked at Elm Street 2 and he's like, "What have you done?" Especially the infamous pool party scene,
Mm-hmm.
which I love. Like, but also you think about it, like Robert's small and he's
Yeah.
surrounded by pretty big teenagers. I'm like, ah, like I like it, but so I can imagine that because Wes only wanted a one and done with the first
Yeah.
one, which I
Yeah.
respect, but he had to sign his life away to make that film. So the first one I'm going to bring up, man. So I've got articles from Screen Rant, Collider, and Bloody Disgusting. So the first one, so we did the honorable mention. The first one is called A Nightmare on Elm Street First Kills. So this was supposed to be like a courtroom drama, the
Mm-hmm.
backstory of Fred Krueger before he was burnt. So it says, although audiences got a taste of Freddy Krueger's backstory in the 1991 film Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, there was another rumored prequel, which had the title A Nightmare on Elm Street First Kills. The movie was workshopped but never got made. Krueger actor Robert Englund revealed that the film was mainly to take place in the courtroom, addressing the legal side of the villain's earliest crimes. John McNaughton, director of Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, was approached for the project, instead suggesting that the film take place in hell and explore Freddy's story after he is burned to death by the parents of his child victims. This idea was rebuffed, and then the project eventually disappeared. So, thoughts on that one, sir?
I've heard variations of that story. I didn't know the title or anything, but I've heard for a long time rumors and stories about this prequel where it was going to be about the Springwood slasher and Robert Englund was going to, play Fred Krueger and the movie would be like a police procedural and it would end with him getting ignited.
Hmm.
And I've always thought that was such an awesome idea. I think they waited way too long if we were ever going to do it. Or if they ever do like a Nightmare on Elm Street TV series, that could be like a really cool couple of
Mm.
episodes or a first season or something like that. Something really interesting to play with. But the difficulty with that is that Freddy fans want Freddy.
Mm.
So I don't know what the cross marketing would be with that. I feel like there'd be a really cool like I said, police procedural, like crime drama crowd that would be into that. And everybody that's like Nightmare on Elm Street horrors would be like, I don't know, like he's never gonna be in the sweater, he's never gonna have, the fedora, or maybe he does when he kills the kids, who knows. But it's such a cool idea. I wish they could have figured out a way to at least try it. Because it sounds like something that could have been fun to just for fans. I don't know where it would have led to. I don't know how you follow it up, but it'd be fun.
Yeah, I think it all would have come down to the writing. If the
Mm-hmm.
writing, because if it's supposed to mostly take place in a courtroom, the writing's got to be on point. The writing has to be magnetic. It has to keep you engaged, enthralled.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like you said, unless the red and green sweater's there, the hat, maybe, remnants of a glove, it'd be great to have Robert there. It would have been great to have Robert there. But we got like a taste of it with Freddy's Nightmares, the first two episodes, with No More Mr. Nice Guy, which keep forgetting Toby Hooper directed those, which is cool. There was potential there, but it had that like schlocky 80s TV aesthetic to it.
Yeah.
Even the dialogue as well. It's like, when Fred gets released and he runs back to the boiler room and he's talking to an ice cream truck, and it's very like cheesy, but there definitely is potential. There was potential there with something that could have been really good had the script been absolutely on point and make it dark. And like you said, end on him being torched. But again, it's that thing of I equate it to there's this famous interview with Sacha Baron Cohen on the Howard Stern show because he was supposed to play Freddie Mercury. Um, and the original pitch from Brian May was halfway through the film, we're going to kill Freddie off. Like Freddie's going to die of his illness. And Sacha's like, no, I'm not, you can't do that. So it'd be the same. It's like without Fred, like you could
Hmm.
start with the courtroom drama quarter of the way through, or maybe half, and then you get to this guy here. Again, it's the trademark of who he is and how West designed him. And I don't know, I feel like it would go under the radar, possibly like a new Nightmare type of audience,
Hmm.
I guess.
You know, it would be really cool now that we're in a day where you have a lot of studios that are trying to succeed at the box office, but trying to, fluff up their streaming service networks as well. Is if you could get somebody, whether it's an A24 or somebody like that, that could get the rights and get somebody to sign off on them doing a theatrical Nightmare on Elm Street reboot movie, but do like a 6 episode miniseries prequel leading up to the release of that, where you get to see whoever the new actor is who's going to be playing Freddy in human form. You could introduce different characters who are going to be playing the parents, like John Saxon's character or whoever. And maybe even get introduced to some of the kids, like the younger versions, like It Chapter One style. And
Mm.
then he gets torched, and then we lead into the movie months down the road. We go see the movie, and now we see the dream demon version of that character and those kids grown up as teenagers who are now the new victims.
That, yeah, yeah. I think because of Stranger Things as well, it's
Mm-hmm.
really made me yearn for, like, you just like essentially what you just pitched, especially after season 4 of Stranger Things with Vecna. That is
Mm-hmm.
just like, and even the Duffer Brothers, I'm pretty sure, said their biggest inspiration was Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
And just the way I've always wanted to see them tackle Elm Street, because they know how to surround themselves with a crew that can do the 80s justice. It's not fluoro. There was lots of, Pooh Browns and stuff like that in the 80s with the aesthetic, and they nailed it. But the next one is from Robert Englund. This is a pitch from Robert Englund. I don't know exactly what year this was, but this is called Freddy's Funhouse, a Nightmare on Elm Street Freddy's Funhouse. And this was based around Tina's sister. I'm pretty sure her older sister. And she comes back to Springwood after her sister's death to find out more about Freddy, and eventually goes up against Freddy. What are your thoughts on this one, sir?
It's really interesting because, like, you say Robert Englund, and your inclination as a fan is to be like, oh, anything that he says, yes, he knows the character better than anybody. But you
Mm.
listen to some of his opinions on the franchise, and he really goes against the grain with what most people, I would think, as fans would think. Like, I remember reading that his favorite film in the franchise is the fifth one. Now, I don't know how much of that, yeah, I don't know how much of that is like the film itself, how much of that is just the fun he had making it. I'm sure all of that kind of combines. But and even obviously a lot of, I'm sure, the direction they took Freddy was him pushing it into a more comical direction, which not a lot of people loved. So it's one of those weird things where it sounds like a good idea as far as the starting point of the story, but then you title it Freddy's Funhouse, and I think Freddy's dead. I think it's going to be goofiness. It's going to be silliness, and so it's interesting. It's interesting how most of us are like, we want the dark Freddy, the mean Freddy, the scary Freddy, and I think Robert Englund is more attached to the later side of Freddy. Even his personality, whenever he does guest appearances and stuff like that, it's all 4, 5, and 6 personality of Freddy. So I don't know. That one would be interesting.
Yeah, you made a good point there. I've never thought about it. When he does a con appearance, whenever he does a laugh or an impersonation, it's 4, 5, and 6. It's
Hmm.
goofball Freddy. And it's you've got to sometimes take what he says with a grain of salt. Like, he is still convinced that the original glove he took and gave to his agent. The original glove is in London at the moment at the prop store. And
Hmm.
it changed hands throughout the years, but sometimes I think he embellishes a bit, but also I did not know his favorite was Elm Street 5. I remember him saying it was, at one point, it was Wes Craven's New Nightmare, but like you said, it could have been the experience he had.
It probably changes, but yeah, the article that I read, he was talking about 5, and I was like, really? And that's why it's stuck in my brain.
And again, as soon as Englund says anything, you're like, well, he's right. He's Freddy.
Yeah.
Like, there definitely is potential there. It's like first kills. If it's a courtroom drama, the dialogue's got to be on point. You'd have to make this like a real proper murder mystery, especially given the fact that it's Tina's sister, does she go back to the house where it happened, where her sister was killed? Do you get little Easter eggs of like the first Elm Street? And then I think also it comes down to the aesthetic of Freddy. Like, is Freddy still how he looks from part one? Is he like this guy now, or part three? So I don't know. I think it was like, I don't think he wrote a proper treatment or anything. I think it was just he's jotted this all down and he's just repeated it over the years.
Hmm.
The next one, man, is, are you aware of Peter Jackson's Nightmare on Elm Street 6?
This one I am aware of. I did a
Mm.
lot of research whenever I did my review series way back in the day. It was the first thing I ever did on my channel as far as a series of videos. And I loved his idea, at least for the jumping off point of
Yeah, well, do you want
having.
to lead the way, so with the pitch?
Yeah, so from my memory, what it was essentially is that Freddy is in a spot where he's basically lost all of his power and he's in the dream world, and kids actively go to sleep at night, go into the dream world and like essentially torture him, treat him like a piece of trash.
Mm.
And so people are so not afraid of him that they literally have turned his nightmare world against him. And it would kick off with a kid pushing him too far, and Freddy gets the better of him and kills this kid, and that ignites the fear again that Freddy's back, he's killed somebody, and all of a sudden he starts to get his power again. I thought that was a phenomenal idea for how
Mm.
to, I mean, no matter where in the franchise, just a way to kick off how he comes back.
Yeah, it's almost, I wouldn't say it's meta, but it has that kind of self-awareness that, is it a metaphor for where the franchise has gotten to?
Yes.
And I love that idea. And they said in the Never Sleep Again documentary, they like beat him up Clockwork Orange style. They like, they're brutal to him. And like you said, one kid slips up, loses their footing or whatnot, and Freddy gets him, and that little bit of the kill reignites that fear again and gives him that little bit of energy. And there was something to do with a cop. A cop falls into a coma, and he's in what's called the coma pit, and he's permanently in Freddy world. Which I think, like you said, it was so fascinating. Like, and you try to picture like, what does Fred look like now? Is he like falling apart? Is he like, like a hobo, like on the like in the boiler room? It's fascinating. I think the silver lining is obviously Peter Jackson forming that relationship with Bob Shea at New Line, and
Hmm.
look where that led him.
Yeah, exactly. It's hilarious to think that Freddy's dead in a weird way kind of led to the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yeah, like 20,000 Oscars later.
Yeah.
Because there was that one. It was that right. It was called The Dream Lover. Nightmare on Elm Street 6, The Dream Lover. Very strange title.
Hmm.
And then ultimately they went with Mike DeLuca's script. Freddy vs. Jason. So the film that we
About
got.
50 of these.
Oh my God, it is. Yeah. So like we're like, I'll do the cliff notes. The film that we got, story wise, to bring these two titans together, do you think that's the best possible way they could, like, do you think that's the best Freddy vs. Jason movie we got?
If not, it's close. Now, I am
Mm.
a fan of the movie, so I'm a little bit biased, I guess, but I think that the idea of Freddy manipulating Jason and getting him to reignite the fear, and then him becoming this unstoppable killing machine, and Freddy getting pissed about, like, I think that's a brilliant way to bring them together. People can debate on the execution on different things in that movie. I really enjoy it, but as far as the story on how to bring them together, I think that's just the right amount of silly and self-aware with actually being something that's not full on like comedically bad.
As convoluted as it sort of is, you know, Freddy's using Jason as a pawn to, you know, get that fear swirling again, because he's essentially forgotten, and kind of reminiscent of not being a joke, but just he's not what he used to be. I
Hmm.
think again, it's the best possible outcome, and I share the same thoughts with you. I equate it to like a WWE match. It's
Yeah.
like just fun. It's theatrical fun. The end fight, like when Freddy's like smashing the valves off those tanks, and they're just like torpedoes. I'm like, this is what I signed up for. This is, I think, the best they could have done. Because they've got here the one story that was floating around was Jason on trial. That was around the same time as the O.J. Simpson trial, and then another one. There's the cult of Freddy with the Fred heads, and they take high dose sleeping pills to communicate with their idols. So it's like they worship Fred. And the idea was that the cult worked the entire movie to bring Freddy back into the real world. And then the next one, have you heard of the boxing match one?
I don't believe so.
So, okay. Ted Bundy was going to be the ring announcer.
Nope, never heard this one.
Ted Bundy gets shot by Lee Harvey Oswald. Jason is wearing boxing gloves. Um, and yeah, it was essentially that's how they brought them together for a boxing match in hell.
Hmm.
Very interesting. There's
Directed
one
by Rob
where
Zombie.
and the whole audience is just like trailer trash.
Yes.
So the one it's okay, so it was supposed to be in the ending of Freddy vs. Jason. The one we got was Pinhead. Are
Mhm.
you aware of that ending?
I remember something about it where, they're fighting on the dock essentially, and then some chains come out of nowhere and pin them to the wall. And he says something to the effect of, "Gentlemen, what's the problem?" And then cut to black and everybody freaks out.
Yes, that's the one. It's very convoluted to get the rights, I guess, and that's why it didn't happen. But man, that could have been good. I think the one that got the furthest after that, and it became a comic book series, was Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash. Did you
Hmm.
read those comics at all?
I did not read the comics, but that was one that at the time when this movie came out, I was like heavy in message boards. I don't know if you remember doing a whole
Oh
lot of
yeah.
that
Yeah.
before social media took over, but I was heavy in message boards looking for anything that even smelled official about Freddy versus Jason 2. And everybody was talking about we need Pinhead, we need Michael, we need, whoever, Chucky needs to get in there. And at the time, I wasn't familiar with the Evil Dead films. I was very late to the party on that. And Ash was the big one that a lot of people kept bringing up. And that actually made me go rent the Evil Dead trilogy, was just people on message boards suggesting that's where they were going to go. And
Yeah.
so I binge watched all three of them, which was a really weird way to experience them, I got to admit. But I watched them, it didn't quite grab me, and I was like, no, like this is the worst possible idea. And now, as an adult, I look back, I'm like, damn, that would have been like the best possible idea.
Yeah.
And what I had heard, what happened was it got all the way to the point where they were actually calling Evil Dead people, like they were calling Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, and they were getting ready to really start to like put this thing into motion. But they essentially told him you can't really do anything to kill or really do any permanent damage to Freddy or Jason and all this stuff. And he's like, okay, no, we're not going to do it because why would I join this to make me look like I'm inconsequential to the plot?
Because essentially, yeah, Ash was going to be cannon fodder.
Yeah.
And I think that just defeats the purpose because he's supposed to save the day. I think
Yes.
it would have been like, how would you have pitched it, like for it to go down between the three of them?
Oh man. See, that's a difficult one because the Evil Dead films are interesting because they're all tonally so different. And
Mm,
Ash, very much like Freddy Krueger, like kind of tonally switches a little bit throughout the series, somewhat. I mean, he's always got a little slapstick to him, but I feel like you would have to taper down. Like, I wouldn't want like Army of Darkness level Ash. It would have to be somewhere between the original and two, leaning much more in the original if I was to do it. And I think it would just have to be something where like the news would get out about this bloodbath between Freddy and Jason and all the reports, and the surviving characters are, I don't know, putting in a loony bin or something like that, trying to like contain it to put Freddy back to bed. And that would like draw Ash there, like, oh, these must be deadites. I need to go check it out. And then and then you could get Adam Marcus in there and be like, I all the time I told you guys Jason was a deadite.
I definitely feel like there'd need to be a throwdown in S-Mart, like
Yeah.
whether or not Ash lures Freddy and Jason into S-Mart, because that's his domain. He's like, I know the ins and outs of this place. I'm gonna fucking Kevin McAllister the both of you.
Yeah.
Just something like that, and have that. Oh God, like you said, that hint of Army of Darkness. I think Army of Darkness just balances that fantastical horror and comedy. Then obviously Evil
Hmm.
Dead 2 is essentially a remake of Evil Dead 1, and but they're all great in their own right. They all bring something different to the
Yeah.
table. But like you said, if Ash gets word of what had just gone down at Camp Crystal Lake, and he's like, well, I've got to get the boomstick out and put a stop to this. And I just feel like, yeah, luring them somehow, these two idiots to S Smart, and just I think possibly Easter eggs galore. Like, I don't know, like you have a photo of Wes Craven up on the wall and Raimi, and like, the little nods in the original Evil Dead with Freddy's glove in the shed, just stuff like that. But I actually haven't even read the comic book either, man. I hear good things though. So the final one, and then we'll have a bit of a chinwag after this. It's the one I wanted to save to last because it it is a physical pitch. It's a treatment written by John Saxon in 1987 called "How the Nightmare on Elm Street Began." So this
Hmm.
takes place in the late 60s. They have a daughter named Betsy. Are you familiar with the original deleted scenes from the first Elm Street?
This is actually really funny. So when I was reviewing the first film, it was the first time I sat down to watch the first film, like attempting to look at it through a critical eye.
Hmm.
And after seeing it for years and years and years. And when I watched it, there was something about the way that the parents behaved, Nancy's parents behaved, that made me think. And I said it in my review, I was like, I wonder if there was ever an idea that she had an older sibling that was one of Freddy's victims or something like that, because they're so like, what caused the divorce? Like,
Hmm.
there's some kind of grief there. Why is the mother so overbearing? Why is the dad so detached? And I said that in my review, and I had everybody and their mother call bullshit on me. They're like, dude, you watched the deleted scene. Don't act like you like figured this shit out. And I was like, I swear to God, there's a deleted scene. And so I to this day, I still haven't watched the deleted scene.
Ah,
But
okay.
when I watched the original for the first time back in it must have been 2017, I think, when I started the review series. For the first time I was doing a review, something about their behavior, I was like, that would be kind of cool. I wonder what that'd be neat to put that in there. And then
Hmm.
lo and behold, that was a part of it.
Yeah, it's essentially when Marge is in the basement with Nancy telling her about Fred Krueger, and she's like, Rod, Tina, Glenn, they all had brothers and sisters. You weren't always an only child, Nancy. And
Hmm.
you watch it, you're like, oh God, that's heavy. And like Heather's reaction isn't exactly like selling it. And I think Wes was like, that's too much information. We got to like
Yeah,
just get
clean it
through
up.
that. Yeah. So it essentially sort of ties in with that. So from a previous marriage, Lieutenant Thompson has a daughter named Betsy, and then he marries Marge, and they have Nancy. So Marge despises Betsy. Nancy's the golden child, but Nancy's very young, so Nancy doesn't really remember all this. And because this is in the late 60s, it was at a time, with Helter Skelter, the Manson family, hippie communities and stuff like that. Betsy runs off, joins a hippie community, and gets on drugs, LSD, all that. Lieutenant Thompson finds her, takes her to a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist's name is Dr. Frederick Krueger. And then a murder happens in Springwood. A little boy is killed, and they tie it back. I'm pretty sure they tie it back to Fred, but he comes off as innocent as first. He's a bumbling psychiatrist, red and green sweater, child psychologist. And then hilarity ensues with what happens to him. And yeah, it's a 12-page treatment that was up on eBay a few years ago and sold for like $300.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'll overlay photos of it. Yeah, how the Nightmare on Elm Street began. And when I think when Lieutenant Thompson is quizzing Betsy, he's like, why'd you run off and do all this? And she's like, Charlie made me do it. So like a reference to Charles Manson.
Hmm.
But because of the deleted scene that is a deleted scene, and the fact that Fred Krueger worked at a power plant in a boiler room, it just doesn't tie in. Regardless of that, like thoughts on this, because it's a lot to unpack.
It's interesting. It's certainly interesting. It's along the lines of that prequel idea where it's like, man, there's something in there that really whets my appetite as a Freddy fan. Like wanting to see. I'm typically not a prequel guy, but there's a lot you
Mm.
can do with Freddy where there's much more meat on the bones besides like, here's how we got the sweater and here's how we built the glove and here's where he bought the fedora hat. Where most prequels just they do that little wink thing too much.
Mm.
Uh, I don't quite know about him being a psychiatrist. I don't think that adds up so much with the later Freddy that we got. I mean, obviously, when he turned this pitch in, we didn't get the later sequels yet, but there's something to that that I like
Yeah.
about filling in some of the gaps and fleshing out the characters a little bit more that first film in a way that could add to it. And that's the
Mm,
most important thing a prequel can do that so rarely I feel like they achieve.
for sure. There's like instances where even I think Betsy spikes Donald's coffee or drink or whatever with LSD and he goes on a trip. So it gets very like existential and you're at a
Uh,
time in the late 60s where all that was pretty prevalent. But it kind of harkens back to the 2010 remake where like what if Fred was indeed innocent? And I've
mhm.
always liked that. I like that kind of like I don't know, it always resonated with me even though I'm not a fan of the remake. Just that little skerrick in the film where it's like holy shit, like did they kill an innocent man?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one for me. Like there's something about the idea of making a version of Freddy that's so evil and vengeful because he was wrongly convicted and wrongly burned.
Hmm.
But the only example we have is one that I don't like. So I think that's why I'm always like ugh, about it because something about the way the remake treated it as this mystery. It's where it's like, okay, well, obviously they're not gonna commit to that because then where do you go from there? But for something for this purpose, it would be interesting just kind of go back and like something that you never knew but was always the truth. That's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And it kind of correlates with how he's such a workaholic in the first film and Marge she's hitting the bottle every day. So and I appreciate that Wes treats his audience with respect in that he doesn't need to explain that they're divorced or why they're divorced. You just figure it
Hmm.
out. Like I love
Yeah,
when it comes in and Marge is like, "Hello to you too, Donald," and he's like, "Marge," and you're like, "Okay, these two do not like each other. They're clearly
yeah.
and I respect that. Like we've gone through a lot of these unmade films, like, and you could talk all day about, it, especially the Freddy vs. Jason ones. Even though towards the end of the franchise it got really wacky, really stupid. At the end of the day, do you think it still worked, or are you still just like, man, they could have just done this and that, like regardless of where it is now?
Um, it, the funny thing about the Freddy franchise, I think most people don't hold the later films near in as high of a regard as some of the earlier films, but that's also when Freddy was at his most popular.
Mm.
You know, with the MTV era, him literally becoming like this pop culture icon, not this, person that we're all supposed to be afraid of. Like everybody loves Freddy, and that's probably part of the reason why Robert embraces it so much and is always just like the party in the room, even though he's a child murderer. It's the oddest thing for us to celebrate as an icon, but it, in a lot of ways, I feel like they were kind of like necessary evils. I
Mm.
have a lot of fun with the fourth film. The fifth one and the sixth one's really the only ones that I just can't get into at all. But they have their moments. But for Freddie to be the icon that he is now, still have this staying power, I don't know. I don't know if he would have quite that power that he has if they had just stayed the course and made Nightmare on Elm Street 1 6 or 7 different times. We'll never know for sure. But even, the Friday the 13th and the Halloween films, they go off in their wild, weird directions and, never quite as campy as Freddy's Dead. But that's also something that always kind of made Freddy stand out too, is the comedy and the personality and going a little bit more zany than the other guys. So for as much as I don't love where it went, I kind of just embrace it for what it is.
100%. Yeah, it's definitely like we were saying before, warts and all. Like they started so strong, so strong, and like I've definitely in the last like 10 years really come around on Freddy's Revenge. And it's
Mhm.
good to see it like renaissance, and I think most of it comes down to Robert's performance. Like Darren from Slaughtered Lamb was saying, he's just so mean in it.
Yeah.
Like he's a nasty bastard in it, and like Frank said as well, it's like, well, it's called Freddy's Revenge, so like he's got the shits. So, and
Hmm.
what Wes engineered and designed is just like you said, he stands out because he had a personality at a time where we had all these masked killers that were just kind not run of the mill, but they didn't have a personality, so they could be replaced by stuntman and stuff like that. And then obviously this little fucker came along and
Mm.
did that again. And I think also that each franchise, apart from Scream, like there really isn't a bad Scream film. There's some that aren't as good, but
Hmm.
I think the others, they all have their dips. And would you say it's like they're experimenting with new ideas?
I'm sure it's some of that. Some of it is them just taking things a little bit too far, learning the wrong lessons from their successes in a lot of ways. Like Dream Warriors comes out and it's a big hit, and it's like, oh, make them funnier. That's the key. And it's like that's one of the things we like about Dream Warriors, but it's certainly not the thing. And the other things are important too. And
Mm.
having a ceiling is important. And then the fourth film comes out and it's the most financially profitable. Go even further. And then they do that in the fifth film. Oh, too much. You know what I mean? And then you get Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which is just like for the time, especially this wildly original idea. Him
Mm.
kind of stretching his legs for Scream. And then after that, we just kind of had to wait around for Freddy versus Jason for a myriad of reasons. But yeah, I think for a lot of these franchises, probably Nightmare on Elm Street more predominantly than not, because they have such carte blanche with the character of Freddy.
Mm.
A lot of it comes down to them experimenting and trying something different and wanting to go even further and kind of finding out what walls they're bumping up against that the fan base doesn't like and which directions we do like. And very much experimentation that pays off in ways and then doesn't pay off in others.
For sure. Like sometimes they go way too far, and then they come
Mm-hmm.
back licking their wounds and like, we got to do another one. We got to do another one. Like the logistics of five.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen Hopkins said he got the job Valentine's Day and it was out in cinemas in August. Like,
Yeah. Which is
it,
odd when you know the story of how the fourth one was made, because the fourth one was made that way, where Rennie Harlan didn't have a script, and so he was just like basically they were
mm,
just building kill scenes and then forming the movie around that, and it's a miracle it turns out as good as it is with that in mind. But rather than them looking at that process and saying, "Wow, we better like thank God it turned out the way that it did when we gave him this set of circumstances," and then they just do even worse for the next guy that comes around.
because that was during the writer's strike for four, wasn't it?
I think so. There was a lot of reasons why that thing was just not ready to be in front of cameras, and then it was, and they just had to figure it out. That's why you get the one kill scene where it's just, hey, just punch air, and we'll add Freddy
Yeah.
noises later.
We don't have a budget for a set. Just get some fucking sheets and put it
Yeah,
around. It's fine. It's fine.
exactly.
I remember even Howard Berger, the makeup effects guy who took over from Kevin Yeager doing Robert's makeup on four. He said we were doing stuff a week before the film came out, and he's like, "Don't you have to like press the film and all that?" And they're like, "No, we just need these shots done." And it's crazy. When you mentioned Wes Craven, another idea Wes had, he was on the run from Freddy in a van and he'd cut his own eyelids off. And the van was driven by Michael Berryman from The Hills Have Eyes, and Wes is in the back, typing away, constantly on the run from Freddy. I'm like, I like that. There's something wicked about that.
For such a gentle guy, and for a guy that speaks so eloquently, when you watch like interviews with him, Wes had some fucked up things going on in his head.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I only saw the name Wes Craven. I remember being at the video store and I saw Wes Craven's New Nightmare on VHS, and I'm like,
Mhm.
who's? Because my stupid little pea brain thought, where's Craven's New Nightmare? And I'm like, who's Craven and where's his nightmare gone? And then you see him, and again, like Robert will say, he's like preppy Ralph Lauren polo shirt, smells
Yep.
incredible, preppy attire, Wes Craven. And I'm like, those are the ones you got to watch out for, man.
Yep, absolutely. The quiet ones.
Dude, I really appreciate you talking shop with Elm Street with these unmade not fan films, these unmade films. It's crazy to think what could have been.
Mhm.
But yeah, apart from that, man, what do you got coming up?
Oh man, so much. I feel like I'm going to be balls to the wall from now until April. So I released Companion a couple of days early. I was able to see that little secret screening that was going to be tomorrow's release, but got Companion out. So I'm going to try to figure out something to bide the time between now and the next week. But I'm going to be heading to LA next weekend for the Critics' Choice Awards. It got
Nice.
delayed a number of times because of everything that's been going on there.
Mm,
And then I'll have a bunch of different things. We got South by Southwest that's right around the corner, which they've announced some of the films for. Overlook, I just got approved for. Don't know the films for that yet. I'm going to be heading to Mad Monster right after I get back from South by Southwest, which Robert Englund and Brad Dourif are both going to be there. So it's like a wet dream for me. I'll be meeting them for the very first time, so it's going to be pretty cool. But as far as content, just a lot of the new releases, and I'm still kind of in uh idea mode. I kind of want to do some new things this year. So I've revamped my Patreon a little bit. I've revamped my studio. I got a new computer set up and everything. I'm trying to get my camera angles and everything fixed where I want them. And um, once I get that hammered down, there should be some cool things to announce. At least things I'm going to try this year. You know, my own experimentation. We'll see how it fails or or succeeds.
I love that though, man. Like you're constantly
Mhm.
evolving, trying new things. Because for me, it's always like I don't know what the day is going to bring each morning. Like, you don't know what
Mhm.
news you'll wake up to, and you're probably the same. Like you're constantly on standby. Because I like now and then you'll drop stuff if you're like reacting to something, especially if in like the horror realm. Like I saw this morning, Damien Leone put up the Terrifier 4
Mhm.
script front, which is cool. But yeah, I love it. I kind of love the plan is there is no plan sometimes of it all.
Yeah.
But also, like you're saying, with your background and your equipment, trying new things. And like I'm constantly like, I'll be editing and I'll like look at the backdrop here. I'm like, no, I gotta like move that over there, move that over there. And it's just this constant shift of nothing's ever right. But I love it. Actually, I didn't realize so you said your companion review is up.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I put
Okay,
it
cool.
up. Maybe was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday.
Oh
Sometimes the
man.
days bleed together, but yeah, I saw it at the little Cinemark secret screening thing, which I've never gone to those, but I heard whispers it was either going to be that or Hard Eyes.
Ah, yep.
And Hard Eyes unfortunately drops when I'm in LA, so I was like, maybe it'll be that, and I won't have to put up a
Mm.
late review for that. And then it was Companion, and then I was totally cool with it because I ended up loving the movie.
I'll go watch your review after I get off here. But just quickly, what are your thoughts on Companion?
I had a really good time with it. Trying to play coy with what I say, I was very worried that something they decided to release in the marketing, not only in the trailers, which I was avoiding, but the poster as well, which I can't
Mhm.
avoid. I was like, man, I hope that's not going to ruin the movie for me. I hope that's not going to be like a major thing that would have been cool to have revealed. And I was pleasantly surprised, not only how early in the film it's revealed, but how well the first 15 minutes played, despite knowing that. And I just thought it was a very fun horror comedy where it's wicked at times. It's got some good carnage here and there, but it was just really funny.
Yeah.
And anytime a movie can make me laugh, it's always a big surprise for me because I just don't vibe with modern day movie comedy for some reason. And I really like Jack Quaid and Sophie Thatcher and the idea, the things that they're unpacking. They did a good
Mhm.
job at being funny enough with it and over the top with it that it didn't feel like overly heavy handed for such a deep subject. So I really enjoyed that one. It was a nice little surprise to close off what was otherwise a kind of a rough January, which they're always rough.
Yeah, like everyone says, it's where movies go to die.
Hmm.
Yeah, I try to go in as blind as I could, and like you said, the main thing that they supposedly like gave away in the first trailer is a minor player in the film, which is cool because I remember when I downloaded the trailer for my review just for B-roll, and that I hadn't even watched the trailer for that, but I kind of knew what was going on, like with the posters and stuff. And I looked at the comments just to be like, and people were like, "Oh, you ruined it! You ruined it!" So I was like, "Hey, I saw a screening 2 weeks ago. What you see here is nothing compared to what goes on." And I love what went on. I thought it was
Yeah.
so different. And I had it balanced that, like sometimes it can be very horrific and quite confronting with one particular scene that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. But the comedy as well, like you said, Jack Quaid, Sophie Thatcher, even the other actors, the dude who was in Smile 2, they're
Hmm.
all great, man. It was like, and my wife even loved it. Like, my wife doesn't usually do horror, and she's like, "I'll give this one a crack," because the poster's like so girly, and
Yes.
it's like got that nice pink aesthetic. And she was like, "Yeah, it was pretty good. That was great." So yeah, I
I think they
wanted.
do a good job at appealing to those too, because it takes some really nice pauses of all the chaos going on to be like a genuine romance movie
Mm,
and be effective with it and have some emotion there. So I said the same thing. My wife very rarely goes to the movies with me, but on the drive home, I was like, I think you would actually like this one.
mm. Yeah, yeah. I definitely want to see more little movies like that, like where it's not what you think. You can watch a trailer here and there, but if you have to avoid them, go for it. But it just balanced everything so well. So yeah, hopefully it gets a lot of eyes on it here when it comes out, because horror
Hmm.
movies here in Australia are definitely a hit or miss. Like when I go, because most times out of 10, if there isn't like a screening or anything, I'll just happily go to my local cinema and grab a ticket during the day. And it's great because no one's there, but it's kind of sad at the same time. It's like, damn, I just wish there'd be more eyes on this thing.
Yeah, it's always such a double-edged sword for me because I'm the same way. I walk into a lot of movies that I see throughout the year and there's barely anybody there, but I'll walk into, you know, a Disney live action remake that seemingly everybody said that we don't want and it'll be packed house. But I'll be sitting there and be like, man, I wish more people would be in here. And then there's sometimes where I'm in a theater that's got a lot of people and they're on their phones or something. I'm like, man, I wish I was by myself.
Oh,
So
100%.
it's always kind of a double-edged thing.
I'm going into my like cranky old man phase of my life now because like kids now are just little pricks, especially around here on their e-bikes and everything and their bloody technology and all that shit.
Yeah.
But like in movies, like especially horror movies, man, little like teenagers, they're rude, absolutely
Hmm.
rude. I'm like, oh God, you paid money to just sit here and be on your phone and have the flash on with your camera when you're Snapchatting and all that. So that's where it is. Like I said, double-edged sword. Like I love the peace and the tranquility. But when it's a really good horror movie, you're like, oh, more people need to see this. It doesn't have to be necessarily horror. What films are you looking forward to this year?
Number one is probably 28 years later, just 'cause I've been waiting on that to come for a very long time. And I have a lot of confidence it's going to be awesome. The fact that they already have multiple ones in the can, or at least uh, in the process of being made, tells me that they know they got something good here.
Yep.
Of course, I love Mission Impossible, so I'm looking forward to that one. Still can't figure out if it actually is the final one or not, or if we're playing by horror rules and putting final in there means it's definitely not the final one.
Mm.
I think Sinners looks really good, and I'm glad I didn't watch the full trailer yesterday because all I've heard about is how much it gives away.
Mm.
And Death of a Unicorn kind of came out of nowhere and looks really fun.
That with Paul Rudd.
Paul Rudd, that looks like it's
Yeah.
going to be a lot of fun. And I'm trying to think of some other ones like
Oh,
Ballerina, I'm sure is going
yeah,
to be
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Big John Wick fan. And Nobody 2. Nobody was my favorite film the year that it came out. I was a huge fan of that one, so I can't wait to see what they do again.
Dude, I was 2 years late to the game with nobody. I watched it on a plane coming in from Canada. I
Mhm.
loved it, man. That bus sequence with Odenkirk and those guys where no one really wins.
Yeah.
It's like the proper way a fight would go down. Like one of them punches them and it breaks their hand and they're like wailing and it's so good. And like what a nice little turn for Odenkirk as well.
Yeah, and I did not know how badly I needed Christopher Lloyd taking people out with a sawed-off shotgun in my life, but I'm glad I have it.
Yeah, I'm glad the guy's still got it, man. Like he just keeps going. I love those memes of like when I was a kid, Christopher Lloyd was old. Now he's still old. Like
Yeah, exactly.
Superman, of course. Like the
Oh
discourse
yeah,
is
yeah.
Superman, the
It
discourse.
insufferable.
Um,
It's going to be worse when it comes out,
oh,
especially if it's really good, but you have a certain section of the internet that's going to swear every single frame is the worst thing they've ever seen in their life. That's when it's going to get bad.
so you saw the new trailer with him googly-eyed flying?
Yeah, the little 3 seconds of extra footage or whatever. Like it to me,
It's
I
not that
got it from
deep.
both ends. Yeah, I got it from both ends. I was like, I don't think this little 3 seconds of footage is worth the outrage or the praise. Because I got a couple of buddies of mine that are hardcore DC, hardcore Snyder fans, and my buddy Rudy messaged. He's like, "This looks great," and he sent us the 5 seconds of footage, and I messaged back. I was like, "That's 5 seconds. I'll never get back," just to see what he said. I don't know why you would root against it. Like it's
Yeah.
just one of those things that we're going to be talking about until it dies, where it's like, come on, guys. He got the Justice League movie he wanted to make.
Yeah.
It's a miracle we got that. He's moved on. When are you going to move on? Why do you want this to fail? We want to have another 5, 6, 7 years of failed DC movies. What is that going to gain? I
Yeah.
think James Gunn's going to kill it. I'm sure it's probably going to be some things about it that I wish could be done better because I love Man of Steel, but I think he's going to kill it.
Yeah, I agree, man. Look, I because the trailer, and I keep repeating this, gave me the warm fuzzies. It just made me excited for Superman once again. Not to say I didn't with Cavill, but it was a different type of Superman Whereas this one feels like Reeve again, but
Hmm.
also that silver age of Superman. Whether or not we're gonna have too many characters stuffed into this one, I don't know. It's people already making their opinions. Like I do have issues with the suit, but I'm like, if that's the only issue and everything else is brilliant, then so be it. That's a good trade-off for me. I'm really looking forward to the Pinocchio Unstrung.
I'm
Um,
curious about it for sure. I never know quite what to expect from those guys. I don't know if you're familiar with our history, but it's
oh,
interesting.
I was gonna I was gonna joke before when we start. I'll be like, and as a surprise, we got the Winnie the Pooh Blood and the Honey guys here.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, I was really curious about Peter Pan, and Peter
Mm.
Pan didn't quite work for me. They seem to very much be in the direction of we're not trying to be goofy and campy or embrace the fun. We're trying to make serious, dark, twisted horror movies. I don't personally think that's the best way to go, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. But the Pinocchio one, if nothing else, for the cast has
Mm.
me intrigued. You know, you got
England,
Robert
man.
Englund in there as Jiminy Cricket, if I'm not mistaken,
I think so. Yeah.
and then you got Richard Brake as Geppetto. It's like, okay, I'll watch it.
See,
Let's see what that looks like.
yeah, I look it great. I could see it the other way around. England could do a good Geppetto. I feel like
That's what
he
I was thinking. Yeah,
because just he's got that look now, and he's got like the white facial hair. And what's his name? Richard.
Richard Brake.
Yeah, he's like a tall, lean guy. I'm like, I could see you as a cricket for sure. So-
Hmm.
and then we've got Popeye the Slayer Man.
Yeah. And then even outside of that franchise, we've got like a couple different Steamboat Willie movies coming. One of them
Oh my,
from some of the Terrifier producers.
David Howard
Um,
Thornton's Mickey Mouse.
yeah, the Steamboat Willie or whatever. I don't know. That's the one where I'm curious about it. Like, I just really don't think this concept of let's take childhood characters and make slashes out of them really works for me. But I'm sure a couple of them will hit if they get the mix right. And from what I've seen from the Terrifier franchise and then Stream, there's a chance those guys could pull something off that I could really enjoy. The still that we've got of him in the costume is so ridiculous that it's like this is either going to be horrible or it's going to be brilliant on screen.
Yeah, like I thought it was a meme the first time I saw it, and
Hmm.
this Instagram page it's always like legit stuff is like, hey, David Howard Thornton as Mickey Mouse. I'm like, when? I no
Hmm.
idea, but it looks goofy as hell. But like look, I'm all for the Poonaverse because you know what to expect going in. But dude, I really do appreciate your time today. I just want to say also, I still remember where I was when you did a stream years and years and years ago. I'd be paraphrasing what the title was and it was like channel update, something like that. And I'm like, oh fuck, is he retiring? What's he doing?
Oh yeah,
I was pulling into Bunnings
the end of
Warehouse
an
for
era. I think I called
yeah, end of
it.
an era. And I'm like, you fucker, don't do this. And I remember pulling into Bunnings Warehouse, which is our Home Depot here in Australia. And I remember I pulled in, about to pull into my car spot, and you're like, yep, I'm quitting my job. I'm doing this full time. I'm like, fuck yeah, that's great, man. Because you were a manufacturer?
Yeah, I was in construction when I first started YouTube, and then I started working for Gulfstream, who
Ah,
builds aircrafts for all the
yeah.
rich and famous. So yeah, I was building airplanes for 4 years, and then
Holy
said to hell with
shit.
this. Yeah, that was a scary but very exciting time. Because
Mm.
if you had asked me just like maybe even a month before I made that decision, if I was ever going to go full time, I'm like, no, YouTube's too unpredictable. I can't roll the dice on that. As a father, as a husband, it's always scary when there's unknowns in the finances. But it just got so bad at work, and it was almost like the universe or God, somebody sending me a sign like you don't need to be doing this. Just like bet on yourself for once. And knock on wood, 3 years and a few months later, it's been nothing but growth. So
It has
uh,
been, man. It's
I
been
wish I would have made the decision sooner.
oh, look, you can dwell on that, but you just keep moving forward. So it's been great to see because like
Mhm.
I think the same
Thank you.
with this channel, the second channel. I'm like, man, I should have separated the build videos from the talkie videos years ago. And I even remember Jimmy Champagne.
Yeah.
I did a video with him about Halloween Ends that was on the main channel. And when we stopped recording, because he does a lot of consulting for YouTube channels, and he's like, man, you really got to start a second channel. I'm like, yeah. I'll do it this afternoon. It's fine. And then finally, this April will be 2 years ago, I did it. I'm like, fuck, why didn't I do that later on, but earlier on? But I get you in the unpredictability of YouTube department. Like there are days, and even with Etsy as well, like some weeks can get a little bit um, scary, with rent and stuff like that. But like I'm fortunate enough, and you're the same. You got a really supportive family. I've got a supportive wife who wouldn't have it any other way. I'm always like, oh, there are days where I'm like, maybe I should go get a casual job. She goes, if you get a fucking casual job, she's like, keep
Mhm.
going. She's like, that's not who I married. So that definitely keeps me going. But I kind of like the unpredictability of it. It forces you to think on your feet.
Yes.
Like some of the video ideas you come up with, that they sometimes are like a spur of the moment thing, and it turns out to be a really good series.
Yes. Yeah, there's sometimes it's just like a spur of the moment. Sometimes it's like I'm sure you've even seen it at this point. Like sometimes there's a chunk of your viewership that kind of wants you to talk about the same thing to an extent. And you're
Hmm.
like, I really don't want to talk about that again. And so I had to like find a new way to go at it. That's where I do a
Yeah.
lot of my tier lists where I'll talk about the subgenres or I'll talk about, the specific franchises or I'll face them off. So like I'm kind of talking about the same thing, but I'm doing it in a different way so it at least feels different to me. But yeah, after now that I've gotten the experience of doing it full time, and I know that certain months are a little slower than others, and I've gotten into the thick of it. It is exciting sometimes to have that unpredictability that pushes you. It was just that first probably 5 or 6 months that was terrifying because I did it right before Halloween season.
Mm.
By design, because I knew that was my busiest season. I was like, okay, if I'm going to succeed, it's going to be now. So this is the best time to jump off and I had a great, quarter 4 of that year, and then January through March hit, and my income just took a huge dive. And
Yeah.
I was talking to my buddy Sean Chandler, who had already been full time for a couple of years. I was like, "Dude, what the hell?" And he's like, "It happens every single year. Just bunker down. You'll be fine. May's
Yeah.
coming."
Yeah. It's been great to see your growth and yeah, just how far you've come. Because yeah, I was made redundant, but I had the option to stay in the company I was at. So I used to work for Qantas, the Australian airline. Got
Hmm.
made redundant. I had started all this while I was there, and cruisy job, great, pretty much my own boss, running paperwork out to the pilots on the little turboprops. And then one day, the pilots all got iPads, so it was all electronic to get their load sheet and lock up, which makes sense. It's quicker. Felt like I'd built up enough, and you were probably the same. You're like, yeah, if you give it full time effort, it'll pay off.
Yeah, I just kind of started running the numbers. I was like, okay, I make this much. I'm this successful while working 50 to 60 hours at this other place and being exhausted and mentally drained. If I
Mm.
take that out of it, how much could I extrapolate that? And so it was a dice roll, but it's paid off so far. So, and I'm sure you can agree, there's nothing like being your own boss to a degree because you have yourself to blame for your failures and your successes.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, for the first minute or so, I'll be like, oh, it's my fault, wasn't it? Shit. Obviously, you're on YouTube, Cody Leach. Where else can the good people find you?
I'm not anywhere near as active over there, but if you like gaming, you can also search Cody Leach Game Chamber. I do occasional video game reviews. They're kind of slow the last couple of years, but I do those. I do some sporadic live streaming over there whenever something new is out. And then you can pretty much find me at all the other social medias at Cody Leach YT. I've tried to like brand it all as that. But thank you for inviting me. This was a lot of fun.
No, dude, of course. I'd love to do something like this again. Guys, with that being said, what was your favorite pitch or idea, or how would you pitch a Nightmare on Elm Street? Let me know down below. Love you guts, and I'll catch you in the next one.